Welcome to CrimeSceneX. In today's gripping episode, we delve into the chilling world of true office horror stories. If these unsettling tales capture your interest, show your support with a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and be sure to subscribe for more daily content. Let's get into the video. Every day for the past 3 years, the rhythm of clacking keyboards and the faint hum of the photocopier were the comforting symphonies of my workplace. The office was neither grand nor derelict, a middle ground that brokered peace between ambition and reality. However, in late October that balance was shattered, and the routine I had so cherished became the prelude to a chilling discovery. It began subtly, with the disappearance of personal items from desks, a photo frame here, a pen there. We joked about the office poltergeist, a harmless thief with a penchant for trinkets. Yet when entire files started to vanish and computers were left on with documents scattered in disarray, the jests died down. We started locking our drawers, eyeing each other with a mixture of suspicion and unease. The office manager installed cameras, assuring us it was a mere precaution. But the theft stopped, and the footage revealed nothing. Then the strange occurrences escalated to unsettling incidents. Colleagues reported seeing shadows flitting through their peripheral vision, attributing it to overwork and stress. But the unnerving sensation of being watched began to pervade the atmosphere, palpable in the once neutral air. One night, I stayed late to catch up on a project, the silence of the office pressing in like a thick, suffocating blanket. That's when I heard it. The faint sound of movement. It was not the distant sound of cleaning crews or the usual creaks of an aging building settling. This was deliberate, slow dragging, punctuated by soft thuds, like a weight being shifted across the floor above. I knew the layout of the building like the back of my hand. There was no floor above, just the cavernous space of an old attic, long sealed and forgotten. Curiosity, tinged with a foreboding sense of duty, propelled me upward. I found the seldom-used stairwell that led to the attic, its door ajar, the lock recently broken. Inside, the attic was a mess of insulation and dust, the air thick with the scent of mold. My heart pounded, each step I took raising clouds of ancient grime. Then I saw it. The far corner of the attic had been turned into a grotesque semblance of a living space. Ragged blankets, remnants of food packages, and items from the office were arranged in a disturbing display of domesticity. The truth crashed into me. Someone had been living here, above us, moving through the hidden spaces of the building with disturbing familiarity. The shadowy figures, the feeling of being observed, it all led to this singular point of terror. I turned to leave, a scream trapped in my throat, when I noticed the small blinking light of a camera nestled in the rafters, aimed directly below, to the office space where we spent our days, oblivious. Then came the sound again, the dragging and thudding, but this time, it was advancing toward me. Panicked, I scrambled toward the stairwell, the light from my phone a feeble shield against the dark. I didn't look back as I burst through the door and into the relative safety of the office. The police were called, the building scoured, but no one was found. They speculated it was a homeless person, or an employee turned squatter. But the questions of who it was and how long they had been there remained unanswered, haunting me. The office never felt safe again. Every shadow seemed pregnant with potential horrors, every sound a signal of unseen eyes. I left the job soon after, but the feeling of being watched, of being known in such a personal, invasive way, has never left me. The sanctity of my privacy had been violated, and the trust I placed in the ordinary world was irreparably broken. The office, with its maze of cubicles and fluorescent lights, had always felt claustrophobic to me, but I needed the job. The small publishing house was housed in an old building, the kind with creaky elevators and a facade that had seen better days. I told myself it was character, it was history. I didn't know then that some histories are better left unexplored. It was the height of summer, and the air conditioning had given out. The heat was relentless, oppressive, sticking to my skin and making the papers on my desk curl at the edges. Everyone was irritable, and the usual office banter had dried up like the last drops of coffee left in the pot. We were a skeleton crew, the lucky ones on vacation. I stayed late that night, long after the others had trickled out, their day's quota of suffering fulfilled. The office was silent in a way that cities never are, a pressing, smothering silence that seemed to weigh on my shoulders. My only company was the constant mechanical heartbeat of my computer. That's when the noises started. Not the usual settling of an old building, but a distinct rhythmic tapping. It was coming from the walls. I put it down to pipes, maybe a rat that had found its way into the cavities between plaster and brick. I tried to focus on the screen, on the manuscript that needed editing, but the tapping grew louder, more insistent. It was moving, traveling along the wall, tracing the perimeter of the office. My concentration shattered. I stood up, my chair scraping against the linoleum with a harsh grating sound that made me wince. I followed the sound, my hands damp with sweat. Or was it fear? It was a game of cat and mouse, the tapping always just a bit ahead of me. I reached the far end of the office where the last of the day's light struggled through the grimy windows. The tapping stopped abruptly, and as I stood there trying to make sense of it, I heard something new, a low, guttural moan. It was barely human, filled with pain and despair so deep it seemed to echo through the very foundations of the building. I should have left. I should have run for the door and not stopped until I reached the crowded safety of the street. But I didn't. Instead, I pressed my ear against the wall, listening. The moan turned into a whimper, and then words, a plea for help, so soft I could barely catch it. "Please, I can't breathe." It was coming from the vent near the floor, the voice weak and cracking. I dropped to my knees, peering into the slats of the vent. The space beyond was dark, but I could make out a shape, the barest outline of a person. My heart hammered against my ribs. There was someone in the ductwork. "I'm calling for help," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I didn't wait for a response. I scrambled to my feet and dialed emergency services, explaining the situation in breathless, urgent tones. When the responders arrived, they found him, a maintenance worker who had been doing repairs in the ventilation system when he'd gotten stuck. He'd been there for hours, maybe longer, in the stifling heat, his cries unheard over the noise of the office. The relief on his face when they pulled him free was something I'll never forget. Nor will I forget the creeping horror of the realization that had I left on time, had I not been there to hear him, he might not have made it through the night. Working late had become a given since I started at the data analysis firm. My tiny office on the 4th floor was filled with the soft glow of dual monitors and the occasional groan of the ancient air conditioning unit. I had come to appreciate the quiet, a stark contrast to the daytime bustle of ringing phones and chattering colleagues. That particular night, I was neck-deep in spreadsheets, the data swimming before my tired eyes. The window beside me offered no respite, just the dull view of the building across, its windows as dark and lifeless as my own. I stretched, feeling the hours weigh on my shoulders, and prepared for another coffee-fueled push to meet my deadlines. A sudden noise snapped me out of my data-induced trance, a sound like something heavy being dropped. It came from the direction of the break room. Startled, I called out a tentative, "Hello?" into the shadowed expanse of cubicles. Only silence answered, prickling the back of my neck with unease. With a sigh, I ventured toward the break room, half expecting to find the janitor or a colleague who'd stayed as late as me. The room was empty, save for the scattered shards of what used to be a ceramic coffee mug. It must have fallen from the counter, though I couldn't recall it being there earlier. I cleaned up the pieces, my mind rationalizing the noise as a result of the building settling, or perhaps my own clumsiness earlier that could have left the mug teetering on the edge. But as I turned back to the door, I paused. There was a light on in a part of the office I'd never seen lit up before, the old archive room. Curiosity overpowered my initial hesitation. The company kept old financial records and equipment in there, but everyone used digital archives now. I pushed the door open, the light switch clicking uselessly under my fingers. It was already on. The room was a mess of cardboard boxes and obsolete tech. What caught my eye, though, was the figure slumped over an open box. It was Mark, one of the accountants. His head was down, arms hanging limp, a cascade of papers spilled from the box beneath him. "Mark," I approached, reaching out to shake his shoulder. He didn't move. A closer look revealed the unnatural angle of his neck, the blue tinge to his lips. My heart raced as I checked for a pulse, but there was none. Mark was dead. I called 911, struggling to keep my voice steady. The operator walked me through the steps of CPR, but it was clear that Mark had been gone for hours. The police arrived, filling the once silent office with the murmur of radios and the tread of boots. The investigation concluded it was a heart attack. Mark had been working late, just like me, trying to fix a discrepancy in the accounts before the upcoming audit. Stress, they said, was likely the culprit. The company offered counseling and sent out emails about work-life balance, but the atmosphere had changed. Every shadow seemed to hold a hint of that night. Every unexpected noise, a reminder of the fragility of our carefully constructed routines. I couldn't shake the image of Mark, alone in the darkness, struggling for life in a room full of forgotten things. It wasn't the kind of workplace ghost story that gets told with a laugh. This was real, raw, and it hung over my desk, an unseen but palpable presence. I left the job soon after, not because I found a better opportunity or because I couldn't handle the work, but because some truths are too heavy to leave behind at the office when the clock hits 5. The truth that sometimes, despite all our planning and all our control, life has its own agenda, and it doesn't always align with the business hours. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please like the video, comment what you thought, and subscribe for daily uploads.